Hi, we're the Foolish Couple. I'm Andrew.
And I am Minna, functional nutrition specialist and success coaches. We created Foco Academy to help people achieve whole life success by applying the success principles to 3 areas of life that money can't buy. That is health, time, and relationships. Nowadays, what do you see in the headlines? When you watch news, listen to the radio, or on your Facebook or Instagram feeds? It is all about the pandemic, right? Either about how many cases there are weekly, who died from COVID, potentially long-haul symptoms caused by COVID, or what new variant is coming that is going to be even more infectious and deadly. And that the only way to end this pandemic is to protect everyone around you, is to get vaccinated to help build herd immunity. And the US has now vaccinated over 50% of the population, and that is why cases are falling around the country. Now, all these news seems to be quite one-sided, right? You only hear the bad, but you don't hear about the good. The news certainly doesn't show you how many people caught COVID and recovered with no problems. They don't tell you how many people caught the virus and didn't even know that they had it. You don't hear much about the states that have lower vaccination rates, and yet, instead of people dying from the virus, those states are also experiencing the same rate of decline in cases as those states that have much more widely vaccinated. But I have not seen the media talk about why that is. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, in my opinion, I think there's a few reasons that mainstream media doesn't cover this. First one is negative news is breaking news. No one cares about the people who had no symptoms because it's not sensational news. But they freak out when they hear about a new variant case rising, which comes to the second reason, fear. If you start talking about the people that survived with no problems, there wouldn't be a pandemic. There wouldn't have been a reason to lock down certain states, causing businesses to close, people to lose their jobs or even their homes, countless people who are depressed now, and all the deaths caused from opiate use. And then third and finally, most important reason is that the so-called authorities actually have no clue how many people got COVID and recovered naturally. Without knowing this number, there is really no proof that COVID cases are dropping in the US because of vaccinated immunity or through innate immunity.
So this brings us to the topic about immunity. Can you tell us more what is the difference between innate immunity versus vaccinated immunity?
Well, in a nutshell, your body, when it's healthy, has the ability to heal itself when it's infected by a virus. This is called your innate immunity, and your innate immunity is comprised of 2 parts, your innate immune system and your adaptive or acquired immune system. Your innate immune system is your first line of defense, attacking any foreign invaders. When a foreign invader, an antigen, say the COVID-19, is introduced to your body has natural killer cells and other cells that seek them out and destroy them. Your adaptive or acquired immune system is the system that will give us the memory to fight off the same offending antigen or virus when it tries to attack us a second, a third, or even a 4th time. It does this by making a specific antibody to the antigen, the virus, and when the virus is seen again, it will signal your body to attack and destroy it. Now, vaccinated immunity is only trying to take advantage of the second part of your innate immune system, the adaptive or acquired immune system part, by introducing antibodies into your body and then hoping that these antibodies will elicit a response for your body to attack the foreign invaders or the COVID virus.
So let me understand this. And this is going to really date us. Remember the video game Pac-Man? Your innate immune system is like a game Pac-Man, right? The Pac-Man is like your natural killer cells that chase and gobble down the ghosts, which would be the foreign invaders or the COVID virus. The adaptive or acquired immune system basically attacks the ghosts that the Pac-Man ate and remembers them. If these same ghost or virus appears again, it sends our new Pac-Man and natural killer cells to kill them. On the other hand, for vaccinated immunity, you're getting a shot with antibodies that you hope will recognize the ghost and have the ability to eat the ghost. Is that correct?
That is exactly it. But things have changed with vaccinated immunity protocols specific to the COVID virus, which can potentially lead to further complications towards your innate immune system, and possibly even more deaths and COVID infections from future COVID virus variants.
Can you expand on that? Does this have to do with the different vaccines that are available right now?
That's correct. There are two types of vaccines that are being administered to the general public right now. The more traditional viral vector vaccines, which are very similar to the flu vaccines in the past, and then the other one is this new mRNA vaccines that's never been approved in the past and have no testing for long-term health effects. In my opinion, the viral vector vaccines are, they're very similar to the past flu vaccines, which had many years of testing, so you really have a pretty good idea what type of long-term effects it may have on you. In the past, all vaccines are tested for 6 to 10 years before they are approved for the general population. And testing always starts with animals before they go to human trials to log long-term effects. Now, the mRNA vaccines, they skipped all the animal testing and went straight into human testing, which is unheard of because of the emergency use authorization by the CDC, which is pretty ridiculous if you ask me. Technically, they have only been testing for 3 to 6 months instead of 6 to 8 years, and they only tested for clinical 1 and clinical 2 studies. All vaccines should start with animal testing in the clinical 1 trials, and somehow the mRNA skipped this very first step. This should be of concern to everyone taking an mRNA vaccine because past clinical trials shown that all mRNA vaccines on animals led to long-term health problems and even death. Usually, clinical 3 trials are on humans for a few years before a vaccine is deemed safe for the general public, which will give you the list of potential side effects and long-term health risks before a vaccine is approved and released to the public. If you notice, for all drugs, there's always warnings of potential long-term side effects. But these mRNA vaccines, they don't list these long-term effects. So people that have taken the mRNA vaccines are basically being the guinea pigs for the clinical 3 trials right now. Nobody knows what long-term effects they will have. They could lead to autoimmune diseases, chronic genital diseases, and even problems with fertility. No one really knows and will never know until years later from now. There's no drug in the world that has no long-term health side effects.
I think I'm speaking for many people that I sure don't want to be a lab rat to some clinical trial, and it is really scary that you won't see the full impact of the vaccine until 5, even 10 years later. It's kind of like glyphosate, right? When they first started using glyphosate, people thought it was like a godsend. They're killing weeds so effectively. But of course, now, many years later, we are seeing multiple class action lawsuits about how glyphosate is killing people left, right, and center. I wonder if people who took the vaccine were fully aware of the risk. All you hear is CDC promoting them as safe and effective. The media even go as far as saying that they are following the science, which in fact, the fact is you won't even know the science until many years later. For us, we tend to be a little more skeptical about whatever the authority and the media is telling us, and we often try to look for both sides of the argument, and then we can decide for ourselves what we think is right. Why don't you talk about how we follow the science and why we choose our natural innate immunity over vaccinated immunity?
Of course, I still remember the first time I heard about the whole COVID-19 spread and lockdown in Wuhan. During that time, I was still working at the YMCA as a health coach, and I remember discussing about my travel plans with one of the members there. And I remember vividly telling her that to put off all her travel plans for 2020, as I knew that this virus was going to get to the US at some point. As most people were concentrating on the amount of people that died there and the rate of infection, it seemed to me that no one was really asking the right questions.
What is the right question?
Well, no one was asking why some people died while others survived. No one was following the science as to what group of people died and what was common in those that survived. No one was asking about those that got COVID and what gave them a higher probability of survival versus those that got COVID and passed away. All this information was readily available as scientists in China was handling this pandemic. Most of the data was not even shared in social media, but it was published for the general public to view over the next several months after the outbreak started in Wuhan. Now, there was a lot of data from the Diamond cruise ship that was also quarantined for months in Japan when it had a COVID outbreak on board. This was all over the news. This is the only recorded incident to date. The only recorded incident to date that had everyone tested on board for COVID. Even in these confined quarters of a cruise ship, only 697 out of 3,711 people, including the crew, was tested positive. Now, of the 697, 328 were asymptomatic, meaning they had no symptoms. And of the 697 people infected, only 7 people died. And of these 7 people that died, they were all over 70 years old.
So out of the total of 3,700 people in very confined living conditions and with no quarantine, no mask, many common areas that people shared on the cruise ship, right? They interact with each other. Even then, there was only 697 people that actually caught COVID. And out of that, only 7 people died and they were all over 70 years old. So even with the crowded conditions, only 18% got infected and only about 1% actually died. The ones that died were all over 70. That means that the survival rate is 99%, even if you are over 70, if my math is right.
Yes, this should be the first sign that the virus is not as deadly as mainstream media wants you to believe. Early studies in China also showed that those that got COVID and recovered, or those that had no symptoms, had O blood types, while those more susceptible had AB blood types. This was also later confirmed in studies in US months later. Also, this one's important. On August 26, 2020, CDC released groundbreaking data that showed only 6% of the total COVID-19 related deaths in the US had COVID-19 as the sole cause of death. The remaining 94%? Well, they had 2.6 comorbidities or health conditions such as diabetes, heart problems, high blood pressure, kidney failure, etc. that contributed to their deaths. The CDC also released the survival rates for different age groups throughout the pandemic, and these rates have not changed much since March of 2020 until now. Data over 14 months, which should show you the trends on really how dangerous the virus could be. Here are the updated survival rates straight from the CDC. If you're 0 to 19 years, you have a 99.97% chance of catching COVID or dying. If you're 20 to 49, it's a 99.98%. If you're 50 to 69, it's 99.5%. And if you're 70 plus, it's 94.6%.
So that means that if you're under 19, you only have a 0.003% chance of dying. If you're 20 to 49, you have a 0.02% chance of dying. 50 to 69, a 0.5% of chance of dying. And if you're 70 to 12, a 5.4% chance of dying if you caught it. That makes total sense. As you get older, your immune system is not as robust.
Not only that, remember the 2.6 comorbidities that raises your chance of dying. So if you're healthy with no comorbidities, your chances of dying are even lower. And that explains once again why the 70 plus age group had a higher mortality rate. As not only as your immune system gets weaker as you age, but also most people over 70 has at least one or more chronic health problems, right? Now, looking at the science, these were the main reasons why we never were afraid of the COVID-19 from the get-go. Both of us had blood type O, which is great. We both live a healthy lifestyle. We monitor our health metrics, our genetic markers constantly, and we have no known underlying health conditions. As the Bay Area started rolling out lockdowns from county to county, we were just traveling around to all the other counties that remained open. Over the pandemic, I constantly tested for COVID-19 antibodies every 4 to 6 weeks since April 2020 to monitor if we got COVID. Up until December 2020, I was still testing negative for COVID antibodies, even though we're going out all the time while everyone was staying at home in fear. When California finally enforced a total lockdown in California, that was a sign for us to leave to somewhere that had more freedom and was following the science. It wasn't until we moved to Texas and went out every day, being around people everywhere, that we finally got tested positive for COVID antibodies with barely any symptoms at all.
We often call ourselves foolish. So we secretly chose to catch COVID so that our bodies can naturally fight it off. And there's many benefits of natural innate immunity over vaccines immunity. Why don't you share what science is starting to show as more research is done for those that recovered naturally from COVID versus those that recovered from vaccines?
Yes, this is very exciting news, and this has been on the back of my mind, along with countless functional doctors, nutritionists, and scientists around the world since COVID-19 broke out from China. Your innate ability to fight viruses is so much stronger than any vaccine available. Latest published studies done in Israel, which during the time had the highest rate of vaccinated population, showed some pretty interesting results. They tested people that got COVID that recovered naturally through their innate immune system versus those that got the mRNA vaccines. Those that recovered naturally got COVID antibodies as expected. For those that got the mRNA vaccines, there was a much higher number of antibodies for that specific variant that was designed for. That's good news, right? For the mRNA vaccines. Well, not exactly. When they tested those that recovered naturally with new COVID variants, the body's innate immune system kicked in right away, sending natural killer cells to wipe out the new variants. There's a hypothesis and more studies starting to show that those exposed to different forms of coronaviruses in the past has the natural ability to kill them when new variants appear. Now, however, for those that got the mRNA vaccines, there was no response at all from the natural innate immune system. There were no natural killer cells observed for those that got vaccinated by the mRNA vaccines. What that means is that the mRNA response is overriding your body's natural response to fight different variants of the virus. Recently, one of the most highly ranked and talented vaccine creators in the world is speaking out about the mRNA vaccines on LinkedIn. You should check it out. His name is Dr. Gert Vanden Bosch. And he's expecting that the new mRNA vaccine is overriding the body's natural immune system to fight future variants of the COVID virus. And if more people get vaccinated with these vaccines, it's going to cause a greater real pandemic when our body's natural immune system no longer works to help protect us against future variants, killing more and more people. Now, I think the mRNA vaccine manufacturers, they know this, but rather than telling you the truth, they tell you that you may need some booster shots in the future. Scientists have already said that this coronavirus is not going away and expect new variants every year like the flu. This means once you get an mRNA vaccine, you may need to get booster shots for every new variant for the rest of your life.
Now, of course, this is just us talking science, the research that is out there if you look for it. The information that is not shared on the mainstream media. We're not suggesting that you intentionally get infected with COVID or not get vaccinated. All we're doing is to give you the information so that you can make an informed decision about your own body. It really is about risk and return. If you're healthy and under 70, you have over 99% chance of beating the coronavirus. And your chances of beating the virus increases as you get healthier and your immune system stronger. Knowing this, why aren't more people doing something to improve their health? Why isn't mainstream media promoting more ways to improve your health?
Let's leave you with this one last thought. What changes have you done, if any, since March of 2020 that has improved your health? If you haven't done any changes yet, what is stopping you? Now, at the end of the day, if you're not healthy, you can develop chronic conditions which can increase your risk of dying from COVID-19. And to be honest, any other future viruses that come your way. So we'll see you next time. Until next time, love what you live and live what you love.